On the 25th of April, the MFA announced that the people should remain at home because they feared armed confrontations on the street. But the Portuguese population clearly disobeyed the military orders to stay at home because the thirst for freedom overcame all fears. And so people took the streets to the thousands and supported the military coup to force the resignation of the leader of the regime. The people brought red carnations and distributed them to the soldiers, who stuck them in their rifle barrels, making the flower the symbol of the revolution. The revolutionary process of 74 and 75 was one of the liveliest experiences in Portuguese history. In 19 months, there were 2 failed coups, 6 provisional governments, the process of independence of the colony, several mass strike waves, demonstrations, occupations of thousands of houses, a profound agricultural reform, occupations of land, the creation of workers' cooperatives, workers' councils, trade unions, neighborhood commissions, self-managed factories, businesses, offices, newspapers, and radios. Because the thirst for freedom overcame all fears.
Hello everyone! Woohoo! We've got a nice good evening Portugal tonight, and I can see we've already got loads of people watching, and no doubt it's because you're interested and intrigued by our amazing subject tonight. So it's Sex Over 60s night tonight. Now I was hoping to read the I was hoping you can hear Carl laughing in the background there.
Oh, is my fader up?
Yeah, it is. I
sorry.
can hear you loud and clear.
Sorry for sniggering like a schoolboy in the background.
So I'm just going to bring Carl on actually because he's in the naughty chair tonight. I've got all the power tonight.
What do you mean naughty chair? This isn't the naughty chair, is it?
Well,
it could be.
It could be. Maybe we'll learn a trick or two tonight. So tell me, what is it that we're going to be doing today in this evening?
We're talking to Bob and Viv in the north. We'll bring them on in just a moment. But the setup for this evening, these are the sleeve notes. Join us for an open, candid, and playful conversation about the joy of sex, love, and relationships for the over 60s. Now, this is not exclusive. This means, you and I can learn a thing or two here. I'm nearly there, aren't I? You've got ages to go yet, but yeah, I'm making notes tonight. Our special guests, those expat celebs, Bob and Viv in the north of Portugal, are a wonderfully loving couple, aware of the work that goes on behind the scenes, as well as in daily life when it comes to having a great relationship. Those are the sorts of things we want to talk about, the work that goes into having a great relationship. So those of you who've just tuned in for sex scenes and that sort of thing, I'm sorry. I mean, there may be some mention of sexual activity, but this is about the about love, really, tonight.
I wonder if they'll have puppets and we'll have like sexual conversations. Like we'll test them. Maybe
like sex ed at school.
Yeah, maybe I need to go and get our glove puppets.
Maybe you don't. Leave them where they are. You didn't wash them from last time. We are likely to look at the benefits of aging in this regard and the unique challenges of enjoying a good, loving, and sexually active relationship when it comes to moving to and living in a new country. Now, that's key here, isn't it? Because of the impact.
Anxieties come up, don't they?
Correct.
When you move, and it's very easy to get off your flow, isn't it?
What? No. Share your insights and questions too, please, in the chat on this subject, and let's see how we can help each other enjoy intimate connection for the spring chickens and the golden oldies alike, as well as those in new relationships or veteran companions. And it's not really a warning, but just to let you know, our conversation is likely to be frank and open. So for some, this could be too TMI, too much information, not suitable for work, etc., etc. That said, our aim is to be informative, supportive, and devoted to love. L-O-V-E. That's the important thing. This is done in the spirit of love tonight, not titillation. Although you know me, we won't be far from sexual innuendo and other such devices or distractions. But it is our great pleasure. Do you know which one is the applause key when you bring Bob and Viv on this evening?
Let me just have a quick.
Oh no, it could be any of them.
Is it the yellow one?
Yes.
But before we bring them on,
can see the suspense is killing me.
Yeah, I know.
And them probably.
But look, we've already got a couple of people just.
Yeah, look, that's why Wayne tuned in.
So we got hola, you sexy people from Carpe Diem. We've also got Jacqueline Branco joining us tonight with a lovely good evening. Good evening to you, my love. Andrew Gilchrist, Lord Gilchrist. It's good exercise.
True that.
In fact, we got a few things coming in from him. But finding the time for 3 times a day is perhaps a little bit
wrong with your priorities, man?
And then we've got Victoria Benson joining us from the Algarve with a jolly big hello.
Jolly big hello.
So I think on that bombshell, let's bring on beautiful Bob and Viv and give them a lovely warm hand on the opening of this show.
Lovely warm hand on their opening. You too.
Lovely warm hand.
So
That's
how
lovely.
are you both?
We're great. How are you?
Do well.
We're great. It almost feels like, you know, Carl and I should be sat next to each other as well, and we should be like two sets of
Yeah.
couples.
Oh,
You look so
yeah.
cute there.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
We like sitting beside each other.
Yeah, we do.
You'd hope so, given that you're the stars of this particular theme tonight.
So
Yeah.
where is it that you'd like to start? You know, because I'm guessing you've got a few things that you'd like to talk about and put onto the table. I mean,
What?
in fact, rather than asking where you'd like
I
to
don't know if
start,
we'll put it on the table tonight. We might.
Oh, no.
yeah. Actually, you know, I'd like to take it just a little bit back and find out, how was it that you knew that this was actually what you wanted to talk about? You know, how did you come together to decide that you wanted to talk about sex for the over 60s?
Good question.
Well, we have a history of when we tell our story. Ever since we got married, people get emotional and say, "You give me hope. You give me hope there that this I can have this too." It's like, well, of course you can. You know, we're not anything special. There's lots of statistics to support that we've got it really good now, because years ago, about 30 years ago, the chances of anyone 65 and over finding love, your chances were better to get struck by lightning and even have court.
Seriously.
Oh, no.
That was a statistic.
statistic.
Yeah.
Now, the most likely to find love and be happy are the 65 to 74-year-olds.
Is that right?
What do you put that down to?
Statistically.
Yes, there was a study done, and it's 1 in 304, I
I
think.
think so.
And for 18 to 24s, it's 1 in 1,024.
Yeah.
That's
So
amazing. Straight off the bat,
Yeah,
isn't it?
I mean,
That's
It
incredible.
is. It's
What do you-
incredible.
What do you put that down to, Viv? You know, that it's
I think-
easier for you guys to couple than it is for people maybe in their teens and 20s.
I think when you get older like us, you know what you want, you know what you'll put up with and what you won't. And you know if you want a relationship or not. You know if you, and I'm not talking about just friendship or companionship. I'm talking about knock your socks off love.
Oh,
Just Twitter pated, which is, that's what we were, absolutely Twitter pated, and we still are. It's
I've got to ask, what's Twitter pated? I don't know that word.
really in love.
yes,
Seriously,
yes.
that is an American, a United States
Is
phrase?
it? Well,
I
it's
didn't
an
know that.
American phrase, and it just means you're all a Twitter and your heart is beating and you can't breathe and you can't wait till you see them again, and you're excited all the time. Your vibration is way up here and your feet don't touch the ground because
That's Twitter pated.
Oh,
That's
That
Twitter
is
pated.
Twitter pated. Oh my
You
god.
are so happy and excited to be with this person.
One night, I lived out in the sticks up in the mountains, and she used maps to get to my place several times.
Even after I married him and lived there, I kept using the map to find my way home.
And I got a phone call after she left one night, and I think that this was just when we were getting over the I've got big walls I don't want anybody to ever cross to
Oh,
starting to get open, starting toward that kind of Twitter pated thing. And I get this phone call. I don't think I'm on the right road. Where can you tell me how to get where I want to go, which was back home, which for her was a 3-hour drive.
I think I know what's coming next. I think I know what's coming next. Go
what
on.
do you think's coming next?
Well,
What do you think?
I'm
It's really not
thinking.
what you think.
I'm thinking if it was me, right, I'd be
Yeah.
pretending to be lost, so I get invited back. Right? Am I right?
No.
No,
Oh, okay. Sorry.
no, we were not going there under any circumstances. No.
In the
Okay.
early relationship, we
Okay,
didn't
sorry.
even we didn't
Sorry,
even
that's just me.
yeah. So, but
Maybe
anyway,
later I probably would have done that, but not that time.
so yeah, I had to talk her through how to get back on the right road, even though I wasn't there. But so anyway, yeah, no, we had very firm barriers up when we first met.
Yeah, we weren't looking for a relationship. We weren't looking for
No.
anything. I was never getting married again, ever,
Yeah, neither was I.
ever, for any reason, to
So,
anybody.
So yeah, while I wish I'd have thought of that, Carl, but
Read it in my new book.
we weren't there. So no, we proceeded with great caution at the very beginning.
This is fascinating, and it's really interesting that whilst younger people's chances of finding love seem to be less and less, and the oldies seem to be more and more. There seems to be some lovely clues in here about the world that they're operating in, and the world or the world people remember perhaps of courtship from before. I'd really definitely want to talk to you about that tonight. I think that's going to be a really interesting theme, as well as what you touched on there, which is we weren't going there. There were walls. I think you used the word walls, right? I think that would be a really useful theme as well tonight, to talk about walls and really being sure about whether you want to proceed, what you're looking for, overcoming the pain of the past. All of these, I think, are really important and beautiful things to talk about tonight. So thank you for mentioning them already. Mrs. M, what are you hearing that you want to pick up on? Because I know you will be.
So much. I mean, first of all, I thought, there's so many lovely people who are joining us in the chat room with all these lovely messages, and I want to acknowledge everyone for being here and for standing for love, because I think it's great. It's nice to see Gary and Linda, because I think they've been a bit poorly. So I'm hoping you're all recovered and you're a happy couple, aren't you? They've been together for a long time. I'm just full of this feeling of just real calm. The calm when you feel you've got somebody on your side, you've got someone you can trust. For me, like it's about trust and building that trust. And when Carl suggested that he might have used that as a strategy to be invited over, I actually thought Carl was imagining being in your situation, Bob, and I imagined that he would just say something like, it's a long way, why don't I just direct you back here? Because that's more your style, isn't it, love?
Definitely. You can have my bed and I'll sleep on the sofa.
Yes, which is what you do.
Nothing wrong with that.
No? Well,
at least as a starting position, right? But sorry, I'm giving too much away about my own tactics. This is about you, Bob and Viv tonight. So can you give us a bit more of that context? Eloise is here as well. Keith and Eloise in Morocco, romantic Morocco, feeling the vibe as well. That's fantastic. And Avout, I'm sorry, I hesitated. Avout, because I've been worrying about that so much. I can get it wrong anyway. And we've spoken and had such lovely connections with our conversation, Avout. And I'm sorry I messed that up. Hello, sexy people, you say. I'm at the right age then. And next year I'm 69 with a winky emoji. I don't know what you mean. And experience, knowledge, and being honest with each other all those years where you've worked at it. Bringing the experience of the past as well, which can be a useful thing, as well as the possible pain of the past as well. Yeah. Can you give us a bit more context then? You said a little bit about, you've been in relationships before. If you were saying never again. This is in no way a disrespect to anyone's past, any of us here tonight, but it just sometimes feels like that, doesn't it? We were different people back in the day. We had different experiences, and no one can be blamed for thinking, do you know what, I'm not up for that again. However, that's not quite how it worked out. Do you want to say a little bit about the trajectory of your relationship, your past, and how you came together, particularly in relationship to how then you decided to both come to Portugal as well?
Okay. As I said, we were never getting married again. I married very young, And I was married for 42 years to the same man. And I thought when I got to be about 60, it wouldn't matter anymore. It's like, well, I've been with him my whole life. I might as well stay. I'm miserable, but I might as well stay. What else am I going to do? And then I got to be 59, the year I turned 59. And it's like, wow, I'm almost 60 and it matters. It still matters. I'm not old. Yeah. And I can't do this for another 30 years or I will die. I can't stay here. So I left him. And it was great. I was out, I was free. And then I crashed and burned. And like, what have I done? I've blown up my life. What am I going to do? And it took a while to get through that. But I did, and I worked on myself. I got healthy. And that's where I was when I met Bob. I was 65 by this time. And he was 64. And I'll let you tell you can tell what your background was, where you came from.
Okay. Well, I hadn't been that stable. I'd been through divorce actually 3 times. And it, I didn't trust women, period. I couldn't trust my heart again. We had we'll talk more about a mutual friend later, but we actually knew the same person for 16 years. Her name was Joan. She knew each of us, but we didn't know each other. But she was a coach, particularly for me. And she told me once, she said, "Bob, your picker's broken." Notice I said that with an I. No, your picker. I choose poorly. I choose poorly. And
Why did he choose?
I did. Now, not to disparage, but the first 2 left, and the third one literally scammed me totally. So yeah. I mean, I was still young as far as I was concerned. I'd been alone for several years. I got a lot of coaching, encouragement. I began to wake up. I began to understand who I really was, because I had married young originally as well. And I began to be very happy with myself and comfortable with myself. I began to trust myself, while not with women, in other ways, in my thinking and in my spirit. I put a whole lot of effort into healing. And that was the only way that when we actually finally met, that I would have been anywhere near being ready for a relationship. And even then, it took somebody, well, it took 2 things. Joan passed away, surprisingly, and requested that the 2 of us carry her ashes along with her son and daughter-in-law to the Indian reservation where she'd grown up in Wyoming. So she was highly educated, but also native structured wisdom. She was an amazing lady. And so we got thrown in a car for 8 hours each direction to go up to the reservation, had great conversation. And I'll let you say what you thought about my wall when you got back.
Well, first of all, going up there, I'm just thinking, oh God, please don't let him be a weirdo. Please don't let him. And I knew of him because Joan had talked about him. We met briefly in 2015 or something, briefly, never saw him again. So I knew I knew his character. I knew he was a good person, but it's like, don't let him be one of these people that won't say anything. Just, I don't know him. I don't want to do this, but I did it for Joan. She was crafty. She engineered this whole thing from the grave.
She knew, didn't she?
She did, yeah.
Yeah.
And
I thought you came back and said you didn't think I liked you.
Oh yeah. And then when we got back, we stayed up there 3 days, and Bob and I stayed with Joan's cousin in her little home. And he totally ignored me. I mean, totally ignored me. But he was very cute with Phyllis, the older cousin. He was very solicitous of her, and we went out in the wild. We got to go where white men aren't allowed to go, to find a tree to put her ashes in. And we go up this sacred mountain, and we did that. And we had the eagle's feathers, eagle wings ceremony to the 4 directions, and it was beautiful, just beautiful. So we got back, and the trip home was fine. We talked and all, and I got home, and I thought, he really didn't like me, and it was fine. It was just kind of like, what did I do that he wouldn't like? I don't understand. Like, I can understand him not being interested. I'm not either, but I think he really didn't like me. So anyway, he was just
cold shoulder, I guess.
Yeah.
And it was nothing intentional on my part. I had just been wounded that deeply that's how thick and tall my wall was.
Oh, bless you, Bob.
And,
he was hurt. He was wounded.
A few months later, I got the nerve to call her up, ask her for a motorcycle ride, but then I stood her up because
he was 3 hours late.
I'm 3 hours late. Yeah,
same thing.
Yeah. Said, I'm on a motorcycle. I can't call. She said, you could stop.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But so
first frosty moment then.
Yeah.
I was mad. I was mad. It's like, this is not acceptable.
Yeah.
No, we're not doing this.
So
I got things to do.
Yeah,
I can't go now. I got things to do. Yeah.
It took for me. It took somebody actually coming on to me, being interested in me, a woman trying to draw me out. That turned out to be, didn't know it initially, 18 years younger than me. And
he was flattered.
I was flattered. I was not Twitter pated, but the ice was broken just by somebody showing some attention. And I'm not alone. I mean, I was very comfortable alone, but I am also a touch person, very much a touch person. I didn't have anybody to touch. And so just having that one little fracture was enough that I got the nerve to ask Viv out for a lunch. And then she went to Florida to find a different place to live and move.
Yeah, the timeline on this was we went to Wyoming in August. He came to and stood me up in October, and we didn't go out till December. So this was
he wasn't in a hurry, was he?
No, it's slow progression, and I didn't know anything about his young lady. So for a while, but that was okay. I wanted to send her a thank you letter later.
Yeah, it did not go far.
Yeah.
She may have only been 18 months younger or 18 years younger than me, but she used a very modern term called ghosting and just disappeared.
She did.
And
what an introduction.
Yeah. Well, but it was, Carl, it was an introduction to feeling again.
Yeah.
To at least being interested.
Mm-hmm.
And so Viv got back from Florida, and we
had lunch, and I said, well, I'm leaving for a month to go to Florida, and I didn't tell him I decided to move. Yeah. And I was going to find someplace to live. Yep. I was leaving.
Wow.
So I almost lost out totally.
You almost did. You almost missed me.
But
almost.
She came back. And we went to a musical together to celebrate her birthday on February 4th of 2018. Uh-huh. And we were married in June 9th.
June 9th.
But
excellent.
In the meantime, so she actually did sleep not on the couch. She came down to go to a concert with me to go listen to my daughter sing, Holly. And I said, well, Holly's bedroom's upstairs. You're welcome if you want to stay.
She wasn't living there anymore.
Yeah. And it's like there were 2 different weekends there that we did not touch. we didn't, though I'm in, well, we both are.
Mhm.
We'll get into that more, but we're very touchy-feely people. Touch is our love language.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were very, very cautious because we didn't want touch and getting physical too fast
Yeah.
to torpedo the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we say we took it slow. Our kids didn't think so, but
Scared his poor kids to death. Scared his kids to death.
My
My kids
kids-
were fine. They
yeah.
said, go for it. We're happy for you. But my kids are nearing senior citizen age, and his are still,
in their
one's
20s,
in college and the oldest one's 30.
Yeah, so
I got busy right away. He waited till he was old to have children.
So yeah, and the first touch, was that month later, about 3 weeks later.
Yes, he came to where I was dog sitting. That's how I supported myself.
Yeah, but
And,
that wasn't the first touch.
Oh no,
The
that
week
was the
that-
talk. Oh,
We
that was
had
the
a
night of
talk
the
one
talk.
night. We had a talk,
Yeah.
a deep talk.
Well, I knew that I was falling in love with him, and it scared me to death.
Oh.
I didn't want to go there, and I said, you know what? I know what I'll do. I'm going to tell him everything I've ever done or thought about doing that might put him off, and see what that does. And if he can get past that, we might have a chance. So
Yeah.
I
Well,
did.
sorry, what do you mean there, Viv? This it's very reminiscent of a radical
Yeah.
honesty connection that me and Mrs. Emma have talked about. But what do you
Yeah.
mean? What were you sharing? Can I ask what you meant by?
I told him things that happened in my first marriage. I told
Oh,
him
okay,
how
all right,
I felt
okay, yeah.
about things. I told him things I had done that I was ashamed of. Things
Oh,
that
wow,
all of that. And it's like it's stuff he needs to know. He needs
That's
to know that
amazing.
this is in my past,
Yeah.
and it's in me. So he needed to know.
But
And he told me some things.
yeah, well, it was all
Yeah.
relationship type
It
issues.
was all relationship issues.
Yeah.
And it's like, if we're going to be in a relationship, this needs to be in the open.
Yeah.
That's
And
amazing.
no secrets.
Yeah.
Yeah, no secrets.
And I did the same thing with her, and it was a very frank discussion.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And at the end of that discussion, I was going to have to go to work the next day. I don't remember if you had a job the next day.
I did.
It was a 3-hour drive
Yeah.
home. We had what we term the hug,
Mhm.
and it was a hug.
We hadn't touched up
We
to
had
that
not
point
touched.
except with
We
an
hadn't
awkward,
even
an
held
awkward
hands.
handshake and a
Yep.
pat on the back hug to, yeah, good night. Bye.
Yeah. And it was a hug where we literally just melted into each other.
Yeah.
Just
It was a good hug.
it was kind of like that Star Trek episode with Q. Raise your finger, and it was deep connection. We still hadn't said we love each other.
Yeah.
We were still working our way through that, but that was the hug and was the pivotal point, I'd say. And yeah, the next weekend, I told her I loved her, handed her a late Valentine's present teddy bear.
And we
And
had
I
our last
kissed
first
her.
kiss.
Our last first
Our
kiss.
last first kiss.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
this is
Yeah.
beautiful, guys,
this is so beautiful.
isn't it?
It's funny
It
because
was beautiful. It was amazing.
It is.
Still,
It still is.
we've
Yeah.
just come around to that time of year of when we first met, and
wow.
so like last week was well, the 12th anniversary of us friending each other up on Facebook. Okay, so it's just
Aw.
friendship, like,
Oh,
just
I saw that
like a
post.
friend
That was
request.
sweet.
But birthday, Carl had persuaded me to go and meet him, and it was my last night of freedom. I went and partied with a friend with the intention of meeting him the next day, and Carl said, let's meet, and if you like me, come back to my house and spend a weekend with me, because like we lived in completely different towns, a bit like you guys.
Yeah.
And that first moment, the first time you see somebody with, like, for us, we'd spoken online, but we hadn't actually met in person, and seen each other's eyes or had that first hug. But when you're talking about that first hug, for me, it's like the first kiss. It's a life-changing kiss. I love those moments. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Agree.
That was way better than the hug. And oh my goodness, all the parts woke up.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
Look,
Yeah.
Bob and Viv are wonderful. What a privilege to hear the love story. I must, echo that. It is a privilege because you are talking about personal things, and we're very grateful to you for sharing this. But I'm so glad you did, because it is so powerful. And for people who have their own memories of this kind, it's a lovely reminder. For people who are wondering if they can have this happen again for them, it's a possibility, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And it's also, I think, a lovely distinction that you've highlighted there about how the minds meet and how the hearts meet and how the bodies meet. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because there were these 3 stages. When it's in the book form, it's going to be the telling off or the trip. There's the trip, isn't there? Which is the first bit. There's the telling off, where there's a bit of a boundary. I'm not going to be messed about. Then there's the touch. There's the talk, and then there's the touch. And there's all these little episodes in there, aren't there? But in the last bit of what you're talking about, the talk is like, oh, it's so difficult. Do I say this? Don't I say that? And I take my hat off to you for doing that, because that I think that's so classy and deep and perfect how you did that, because it's easy to put that off, isn't it? Because you're maybe gambling. If I say this, I'm going to lose what I want here. But you did it anyway. And then bodies meet, and the bodies have their own language and connection, don't they? It's almost like they're 2 realms, aren't they? The bodies don't lie in quite the same way that our minds can. So when the bodies met in that moment, they say,
Can I just share something? Like when Carl and I had fallen for each other, he found this book called Radical Honesty by Brad Blanton, and he was really enamored by this book, which talks about being radically honest and then sticking around to clear up the mess. And one of the exercises that Brad Blanton, who's a psychotherapist, he recommends that couples, when they first meet, that they have this kind of rampage of absolute radical honesty. And he sets these tasks, and Carl said to me, I'd like us to go away for the weekend and run through these tasks. And I was like, sure, whatever, let's do it. But the task was to talk about every single sexual partner we'd had, what we did, how it ended, then to admit if we'd lied to each other at any point, or told a white lie at all, or just kind of glossed over the truth a little bit because we might have felt shame or embarrassment about something. And I think the other one was to be naked next to each other.
Oh, we'd already done that bit. But anyway, this is. I
mean, it was a high risk strategy, but what came out of it was this realization. Like you were saying, Viv. You were risking the potential of your relationship. And ours were slightly high risks because I was already pregnant with our first child. I thought this could go really, really well.
A lot riding on that conversation.
But afterwards came this feeling of trust that if we could go through that, we could go through anything.
Yes.
Is that, do you think, what you were trying to get to?
It was.
You do that naturally. I mean, what possessed you to do that as an opening move in a relationship?
Well, as I said, I was falling in love with him, and I knew it. And I knew if I didn't do it then, I never would.
Wow.
And it had to be done. I felt like this has to be done. I can't go a step further until it's done. And I don't want to wait until I'm not going any further. It either starts here, it ends here. And there was a very real possibility to me that he was going to hear things that would go, wow, I didn't know that before. I don't know. I may have to rethink this.
Yeah.
And I kind of panicked on the way home because I thought he could call me and say, sorry, this isn't going to work out. And I'm going to be heartbroken. He won't know it, but I'm going to be heartbroken. And I don't think I'd ever date again if that happened. But
oh, bless you.
It didn't. And I'm really glad it didn't.
Oh, my. And Bob, can I ask if you reciprocated? Did you go into the same spirit of honesty?
He
Oh,
did,
yeah,
and he
yeah,
told me
yeah.
things that I could have said I can't handle that.
Yeah.
That's
Well, and one of the things I cautioned her about was I said, there was one common denominator in 3 divorces. That was me. And it to me, it didn't matter if I'd been careless or haphazard or whatever it was. It was that I was in love. I did think that I was going to stay married. My goal in life, coming out of high school into college, was get married, stay married, and raise a family. That was my big goal in life. And it was taken from me, but the net result is we neither one, I don't think, would be, and I think it can be that way for anybody that's older that starts wondering about a relationship. Everything we experienced before we met prepared us for meeting. I have no doubt about that.
it did.
And if we had hidden things about ourselves, whether it was, the sexual relationships or family things, whatever it was.
Yeah, we did the same thing. We did all the same stuff pretty much that night.
Yeah, we did. We did.
Yeah, we had touched on a couple things before that, but not much.
Yeah. So it was, I don't know if I did, because she introduced talking to me with, I've got stuff I've got to tell you. And you said, as I recall, and if you decide you don't want to see me after this, I understand.
Yeah.
Oh my
It was
goodness.
a real possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's very powerful.
Oh, it was. Yeah.
It was.
And
yeah.
I listened.
Yes.
I paid very close attention.
I bet you come to the edge of your chair when something's prefaced
yeah,
like that.
Yeah.
Don't you?
What has she done?
But
But isn't it interesting how our own sense of shame is often so much worse than what other people? I mean, people are free to think what they like, but so often the thing you hold inside that you're embarrassed or ashamed about, which I'm assuming it might be something along those lines, those sorts of feelings. To the other person who loves you, they're really not a big a deal, are they? But you don't know until you say it, and you don't know until they respond.
Right.
Yeah.
And in my mind, it would have just gotten worse and worse and worse if I'd had to keep that inside and not told him.
Yeah.
It would have just festered, and I couldn't have that. I was either going to do it the right way or wasn't doing it at all.
God bless you. That is beautiful, so beautiful, and kudos to you both for the conscious choice of doing it, because you didn't have to. You definitely didn't have to.
No.
And I also see that it not paid dividends. That's such a sort of low level description, but that was an investment, wasn't it, in yourself and each other, to be like that, to take that level of responsibility and consciousness into your relationship. Obviously works in some way, right?
Yeah.
You made yourselves both vulnerable to each other, didn't you? You made yourself vulnerable to hurt.
Yeah.
And I think that really communicates something powerful about trust. And
trust was so important to me, because mine had been taken advantage of, stomped on, and thrown out the window. And I needed to trust him. I needed him to trust me, or it wasn't going to work.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And when you look at older relationships, and we don't consider ourselves old by any means, we're just getting younger. We're rebooting every day. But when you look at it then from the physical perspective too, as the relationship develops and you move toward, and we knew that night that touch was our language, and we have a leg up on a lot of people.
It was so hard to walk out that door.
Yeah. But
like that teenage thing, right? Of just I don't want to go anywhere. I've got to, but where I want to be.
He said, "You need to leave," and I said, "I sure do."
That's amazing, isn't it? Do you know the Beach Boys song? Wouldn't it be nice when we can say goodnight and stay? There's a lyric in it where wouldn't it be nice when we can say goodnight and stay together?
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
it's that realization, is that if that's all you want in the world is to be together, but for
Right.
some reason you can't be, and your own self control and
Our own
decision.
selves were the only reason we couldn't.
Oh
be.
yeah, there was nothing stopping us any way other than ourselves. But for us, the sex question, the relationship question, the love question for us, we are very much it's a heart love based thing. It is dynamic, it's active, it's always changing, but well, I'll speak for myself. I think for probably both of us, we were not the type that were even remotely interested in a casual sexual relationship.
No.
Even though STDs are rampant in retirement communities these days.
Is that right?
It is a
Thank you for those
statistic.
statistics.
Sad but true.
It is a statistic.
They're not practicing safe sex.
No, because nobody can get pregnant. They're not sweating it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so yeah. So we were, yeah, that took an extreme amount of self-discipline that night, but it was out of respect for her.
Beautiful.
I didn't want her to stay because I knew what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And with that hug, I had an inkling of what she wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And no, we wanted to take it a step further because we'd already talked even before that night that if we'd ever, that if we ever said we were in love, that it would be a long-term commitment. It wouldn't be just a casual thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
we already knew that. And so, yeah, some people think it was crazy, but for us, that's what it took,
Yeah.
in order to cross those bridges. But what I was alluding to a little earlier there is that, at this age, you're not this sleek, sexy body you may have been when you were 20 either. And so when you're putting trust into a relationship, including sex, and you're not who you once were, you need to get garbage out of the way first.
You
I
do.
think
You need to know you can trust them
Yeah.
before you take your clothes off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
So lovely. And it's, I mean, there can be a kind of moralization of good and bad, of casual versus long term. But what I get is not that's not the point here, is it? That
No, not at all. We're not judging anybody.
Yeah,
If that's your
That's
thing,
us. Yeah.
yeah, long term isn't better than casual. It's just what I hear is the depth and specialness of how you've gone about framing and preparing yourselves to be in love for the long term, and what that gives you, and that just sounds and feels so special. I can't imagine anyone watching would doubt the vibes that you two are giving off as how you relate to each other and how deep it is. So it's not about morals, is it? It's about
no, not at all.
It was not.
That just struck me. I know, Mrs. Emma, sorry, I keep leaping in to
No,
talk
it's
to women.
fine. I mean,
No,
it's
okay.
like you already had a sacred commitment together that you
I think we
both
did.
knew about.
Yeah.
I think we did. And it went so fast. Now, it seemed like forever to us, but second date, when we hadn't seen each other, we'd only had 2 dates and one was just a lunch. From second date to I love you was 20 days. And it felt like months and years to us, but it went really fast. And that's what scared us kids. Like, you're going to what?
I can understand that.
Who is this woman?
Yeah, because they're not feeling what you're feeling, are they? So it's understandable.
No, and they've seen him be hurt over and over.
Yeah, of course,
and
of course.
They didn't know me. They didn't know who I was or what I wanted. So
fair enough.
We all survived.
Yeah.
We all made
You
it.
clearly did. Now, there's a couple of things I really want to address, and one is the relationship of this, or the how this works in regard to moving country as well. Because not only did you get
Yes.
together in a deep relationship, you uprooted yourselves and moved country,
We
and you've
did.
also, whenever we've talked before, and I think you made mention of it this morning, possibly. I don't know. Anyway, we've talked about it before about how you've taken yourselves on, as well as taking each other on, which I'm fascinated by. And we've got lots of comments, haven't we, Mrs. That we need to address as well.
I've already spent some time chatting with Bob and Viv about how they came to migrate, and that's going into post-production next week. So we're actually so rather than them go to migration.
But what I mean is, what the effect of moving can have on a love life as well.
Oh, well,
does that steal your thunder if we address
a little bit? But I mean, let's just see where it goes.
Okay, all right.
I mean,
well, and also we can take questions from people, because people are commenting and suggesting things, being suggestive in the chat. Interesting, says Nigel Henry half an hour ago, and it gets more interesting with some of his comments as well. I think some treat marriage like a football season with a transfer window. Yes, maybe they do.
Yes.
When we were younger, 20 to 30-year-olds had a lot less stress and were more trustful of strangers than today. So younger people these days are not engaging as much as we were open to doing. And if you are young and watching this, I mean, do ask questions. And I use this term respectfully and advisedly. And in relation to you, all of us here are elders. And if there's anything you want to ask about relationships, I think it's a good service old folks can give to younger folks, or older folks can give to younger folks, if you want to have that conversation.
Definitely.
And now that we're retired, we have even more time to concentrate on our relationship. It's not always easy, but always worth the effort. Thank you so much, Michael, for that.
Really
spot on, says Wayne to you. I think there's so much stress and expectations on youngsters. It's lost on us. And a thumbs up there. I met my handsomes on. Sorry, go on, love.
I was going to read that.
Oh, go on then. You carry on.
Eloise is just sharing. I met my handsomes on a long car journey too, so very intense. The connection was profound. The rest is the future. And boy, what fun and what a chemical awakening we share.
That's beautiful, isn't it? Chemical awakening.
Yes,
absolutely. And you can't really sort of ignore that when you have an awakening of that magnitude. Changes everything, isn't it? So Amelie is saying, I had to tune into this, definitely curious as to what this is about. And actually, I mean, one thing we haven't touched on yet, which I think we should establish before we go any further and read out some more of those lovely comments, but it's like, how is it that you are now wanting to talk about sex for the over 60s?
Well,
your relationship will sort of come out a little bit and how to manage things. But I'm really, really intrigued as to what's like brought that out, that you want to share that.
What do you think brought it out? It's our relationship gives people hope. We don't go around chatting about our sex life to just anybody, but
only on the internet.
Only on the internet. But
here we are.
Yeah, we're such private people. We feel like that can give hope too.
Yeah.
Because it's extraordinary. It's I was dead from the neck down. I mean, I had shut it down so tight.
Oh wow.
I didn't want to have sex ever again. When I left my husband, I did not want, I'd been so unhappy for 20 years. I didn't want to have sex with him or anybody else. Never again.
Wow.
And I shut it down. I had no feelings. I used to joke that there wasn't a man on the planet that could turn me on. I said, challenge you. You get me good. Yeah.
Oh, Bob, that makes you very, very special, doesn't it?
It does. He was the only one, Carl.
Wow.
Little did I
want a certificate. I do want a certificate with that on.
You would, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, I was just dead. I had no feelings. I didn't want to have feelings. And he woke all those parts up, and not all at once. It wasn't, it was a little bit difficult at first, a little bit, not much. But when it came back, it came roaring back. and everything recovered. I mean, it was a miracle, and it still is. I'm still amazed by it all.
That's so
So-
beautiful. Thank you.
so-
Thank you
so-
for being so open and honest about
Yeah,
that. That's
so
beautiful.
like your desire to I guess share deeply and
Yes.
matters of like your privacy and your relationship
Yeah.
and your heart, it's because you've had this kind of awakening experience
Mhm.
where like a miracle has taken place. And so
Yes.
you want to help other people that maybe have
I
experienced
do. And I even had friends, in the same boat, and just is saying, nothing works right anymore. It hurts. It's dry. It just, nothing works right. And I'd commiserate with them, like, yeah, well, I'm sorry. Sorry, you're still trying. I'm not trying. I don't want it, just all of that. And, I started to think, well, what if I get my wish? What if it stays dead? But it didn't. And all those parts think they're about 25 right now. They're just going.
Bob, it looks like you've got something you want to share, Bob.
Yeah, your secret.
Well, no, I was not a good lover in previous relationships.
No.
Sexually. No, I wasn't. I wasn't great. The key, I never knew what making love was. I knew what having sex was.
Mm.
And I had been married. I'd spent the better part of 30 years married.
Mm.
But
You spent over 30 years.
yeah, I did. Yeah. I learned, and it was because of that deep heart core connection. We've been told by some in the what some people call the woo-woo community,
Mhm.
we are twin flames. We're just that's who we are. And so by getting good with ourselves first on our own, having asked hard questions of why do I feel this way? Why do I think this way? That paved the way. But then I don't think we could have had that deep heart connection going back to that talk and that first hug. If any of that stuff was lingering, there, at the very least, we would not be trusting ourselves to tell the truth. And in not trusting ourselves to tell the truth, it actually says we're not trusting them to handle the truth.
Yeah.
And so, I've.
So what made you want to talk about our sex life?
Well, actually, we got so much feedback when we first got together. We actually, at one point in time, were looking at setting up courses in how to develop relationship to give people hope. We actually had looked at one point into seriously coaching folks. We're working on some certifications and stuff. That's what makes this not so weird, because we'd actually done some training to prepare. And the whole thing it goes back to so many people have the idea there is absolutely no way. And if you want two people who thought there was absolutely no way, you're looking at them.
What a gift that would be. What a gift. I'd love you to do it. I urge you. It's not my business to tell you what to do, but please do it.
I imagine everyone in the chat room saying, do it.
Well, we're thinking of one. We're trying to think how we could do the sexy one and get down to brass tacks. And it's like, it's like, I don't think I can look at the camera with me on it and talk about this stuff. So we were going to use sock puppets.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. So,
it's still
stay tuned for the sock puppets.
Oh, please do it though.
I
What a
actually-
contribution that would be.
I actually really resonate with what you were saying, Bob, about being a bad lover. Until I'd met Carl, I hadn't really known what lovemaking was. It felt like I hadn't learned it somehow, and that I was just having sex, and I didn't know what the distinction was until I met Mr. Lover Man over there, and he brought me to my senses in quite a powerful way. But I also think, like what you were saying, were it not for your deepened connection and trust through your really radical sharing, if Carl and I hadn't have done that, I don't know if I'd have felt as loved and as accepted as I do now. And I think that was the key for me.
Yeah, it was for us too. And I don't know how I knew that. I just knew that it was what I needed to do.
Yeah.
And
It's wonderful. Yeah.
it worked out.
Fantastic. Okay, well, I think what we'll do, given the time, because we're nearly an hour in.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's been so easy to talk to you, but
this really feels like an introductory.
it does, and I maybe we'll leave out the expat bit because you're covering that in what you're going to be publishing soon with Bob and Viv. But I certainly would love to talk about this idea of how you took your personal selves on, you dealt with your own stuff before coming into the relationship.
Yes.
And I'd love to make that the concluding part of our conversation, because I think that's important work, isn't it, in a relationship? Let's have a look at some of the comments before we do that. Here's another lover man. I just bamboozled Linda with my shirt when I first met her. I had his lucky pants on as well. I'm sure. I think I may have said it. Hypnotized her. Steady on. I was a bit of a tablecloth design. She must have been looking for the cutlery. It sounds like she might have had a rummage in the cutlery drawer that same evening. We have been married for 42 years, says Copper DM this year. Relationships are always dynamic, and there are times when there are hot and cold periods, and it takes real honest communication to navigate successfully. Thank you for that. And we saw this before, didn't it? Thank you. What a privilege to hear your story, and that has continued to be the case as well. Lovely story. Thank you, Bob and Viv. Actually, says Amelie, being fully upfront and honest from the get-go is always a good idea, regardless of age and in any relationship, for sure. It's
Absolutely. It's vital.
I mean, that you'd buy a book and about good relationships, and you would see that as one of the chapters, wouldn't you? But doing it is another matter, isn't it? Sure.
Well, we learn it from our parents, don't we? And where
or
we
not.
sit. Yeah.
No, I didn't.
If we see that our parents lie to each other or lie to their friends, we don't realize the true value of honesty, do we? Or even how to do it.
Yeah, could be. I think when you are older, it's not about woohoo. It's more about what we both like. We are best friends first, and we care for each other. For us, it's electric just to be together. Look at this lot of romance.
That's the other
romantics here tonight. Yeah. Life is twice as nice if you have a loving soul to share it with. Nice one. Lost things, bless you. True, says Emily to Nigel Henry, but isn't the woohoo great too? I think you two
the woohoo is wonderful.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's different when you're older. We spend a week apart as we split between our houses in the UK and the Algarve, and we have had a hard couple of years with old parents who need help. But I bet you're like a randy sailor when you see each other again, eh, Nigel? I often tell my younger friends and loved ones that the hardest time in an adult's life is the period of end of life for their loved ones. Amelie, sounds like you have some skin in this game of counselling or advice. Often when more senior couples get together, moving in together can be a real challenge, especially if one moves into the other's home. I suppose that's because people are set in their ways, possibly. Starting afresh in a new house or a new country is a much healthier option. So you did that anyway. Well done. What a beautiful way to spend a random evening with really loving and loved up people, says Eloise. Awesome. And yes, it is okay to be sexually passionate about love.
Yes.
Finally. Look at that.
Yes.
Coach Bob.
Come on.
I love that. So Gary's also shared, Bob, when we learn more about sensuality and spirituality, things reach a whole new level, even if your physical body isn't as prime as it used to be.
Absolutely.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
Nigel saying to Amelie, yeah, we chat all day when we're not together. We want to move to our house in the Algarve, but being 68 and 64, we also think life is required in the UK. We will eventually live in Portugal. So it sounds like you've got a really intense plan there, Nigel. I love your commitment to it. It's amazing. We've got Pete in the house as well.
We are not seeing Pete's. Oh, yes, we have. There we go.
I almost want to just like pre-read this before putting it on
you've got to be
screen.
careful with Pete's comments, haven't you? You won't regret a permanent move, Nige. I think that's geographically.
Yeah.
It is the pace of life and quality of the community, wildlife, and the festivals that makes our blissful wallow in Portugal. That's fairly safe. Thanks, Pete.
That's great.
In this stage of life, you have lots of time and energy to devote to each other and the relationship. Isn't that lovely?
Yeah.
Becoming best friends without the stresses of the younger years of child rearing and intensive careers. Yeah, I imagine that must give you a lot more time to explore things. I mean, we've had to hit the ground running, haven't we, love?
We certainly have.
Sure.
Very
Well,
quick manifested family.
Yeah, because you were saying, weren't you, 12 years since we met, and we've got children with a total age of 22 now, haven't we? Our children's total years add up to 22, which is more than the 12 we've been together, which was an interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah, and our eldest is 11.
Yes.
So that gives you a clue as to how quick.
Okay.
I'd like to do this with the customary Brummy accent that Gary brings to this. We don't do woohoo anymore. It's more like, ooh, ah,
Come on, man.
Oh, we need to talk, Gary.
Yeah.
in the house. Okay, so thank you everybody for your lovely comments. Love that as well, Eloise, that you chanced upon a loved up conversation.
It is a really lovely energy, isn't it?
Superb. And so this thing of taking yourself on before you take your other on, and that sounds very confrontational, but you know what I'm getting at. You know, you had in this intervening period where you perhaps had turned your backs on being in relationships, your focus was inward and doing some work on yourself. Can you say more about that and how important you think that is?
It's vital. If we hadn't done that, there's no way we'd be together. We would not have been ready for each other. We would not have done the talk, much less the hug. We'd have probably never gone out.
That would probably, that would be true.
Yeah, Bob was totally closed down. He was, even after he'd done all the work, we were both against a relationship, but I had gotten to the point where I was going to be happy. And it was a conscious choice. It's like, I can be happy or I can be miserable. I can live or I can die. But what I cannot do is stay in this middle ground. I'm not living. I'm not dying. I'm not happy. I'm pretty miserable and I don't want to be. And so I made a choice. And what a lot of people don't know is that we both planned suicide.
Because we were that
miserable
before we met. Yeah, we were before we got the work. Before we really dug into the work of getting healthy, we were both suicidal.
Yeah.
We couldn't figure out how to, and we didn't know that. We didn't even know.
We had no idea about
We
this,
didn't know each other.
How long was it before you revealed to each other that you had both been suicidal?
That was very early.
Yeah, it was in the talk.
That was in the talk.
But we couldn't figure out a way to do it that we could make sure our kids didn't know we did it, and I didn't want my kids to know I did it. So I couldn't.
Yeah.
I couldn't.
But that's how destroyed.
That's how low we were.
That's how low we were.
I was destroyed. I thought getting out of the bad marriage would solve everything, and for about a year, I felt better. But then I'm out there with all my fears and my insecurities and my everything that was in me. It was me. Wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah.
And that all had to be dealt with for me to have any hopes of a happy future. And I was 60 years old by this time. It's like, I figured I'd be old, nothing would matter, and I'd just live out my days. You know, it's like, no, it matters. So I started reading books, listening to podcasts, listening to everything I could find. I went for counseling, had a therapist for a few years, and he was great. Can't say he ever really solved anything, gave me someone to talk to, bounce things off of. And he was a good man. He helped me not to solve anything, but to at least look at what I needed to do.
Yeah.
And I did it, and I learned tapping. That was huge. The EFT, emotional freedom
For
technique.
both of us.
That was huge, and I learned that, and I used it, and I started coming alive, and the day came, I had to make that choice. I can't live this way anymore. I can't do it. And so I made up my mind then and there, I will be alone forever, and it's okay. It's fine. It's better than being with the wrong person, and I don't trust myself to be with the right person. So it was done. It's like, fine, I can do this. I can do this. I can handle myself. I can make my own decisions. I'm going to be self-sufficient, and I'm going to go find a place to live where the rest of my family is, and I will grow old there and die. And that was my plan. That was my plan. And then Bob came along.
I'm so glad you did, Bob. I'm
Yeah.
thinking all of us are pleased that you did here. Like big cheer in the room here.
Can you imagine if this had never happened? What we would have
Honestly,
missed?
I can't imagine.
I can't.
It's not the timeline that we know each other in, is it?
We've only known you as being together, and
which seems entirely natural.
Connected in love. I mean, when you meet you, like obviously we've had the pleasure of meeting you in person several times, and you feel that love emanating from you. It's like being in a hug. In fact, I think I said to you, it felt like you're meant to be here, because it feels like you're kind of seeding love energy everywhere,
Life is definitely happening for us. It's happening for us. It's not happening to us. And it gets better and better. And it's like every good thing that happens, it's like, well, of course it did. It's like it happened at just the right time and just the right way. And it was meant to. And we're meant to be here. Another of our woo-woo friends, we talked about how easy it was to come here for us, to make that decision to leave. And she said, it's because Source required you. And it's like, what? She said, Source required you to be there. It's like, oh, of course he did. Of course Source required it. And that's what it feels like. When we got married and moved in together, there was no adjustments. We felt like we'd been there forever.
And she did move into my house.
I did. We lived there for 3 years. We were tested. We got married in June, and in September, my knees stopped working. And by December, I could hardly walk at all. And I spent the whole next year trying to heal them, and that didn't work. So in 2020, I had both of them replaced.
Both knees.
Yeah. And we were still newlyweds at this point. You don't do that.
Well, I think maybe Source got that messed up when they heard the message that you wanted to be weak at the knees.
They took it literally.
You got to be more specific with these things, Viv.
They made me weak at the knees, all right.
So that's your process, Viv, and you described that beautifully. Bob, you have also had your journey before. The preparatory work, if you like, creating the right environment and soil.
I lost my family, my home, and a child in 12 months, and my job in a 12-month period.
Good God.
And I was low. I made some decisions that were not healthy, and I think you say I shouldn't have been deciding what to cook for supper, and I made some poor decisions after that. I met some people that had done early work with sound therapy. A brilliant engineer and his wife, just in the course of my job, just in the course of my work, I was working for a well driller, and I was servicing their well, became good friends with them. Wow. Hello. And through that, I started learning sound therapy, and then through Joan, I learned about tapping.
Yeah.
So I learned about thought and how your mind, and I blew it off of first, how we actually create our own reality by our thinking and then live it out. And that was a really hard one to get around for me. And I don't know what the final trigger was. I was in a very bad relationship, toxic. I was broke. I trying to remember if I had a job at that point in time, trying to make it self-employed. And something clicked. And I think it was, I heard Wayne Dyer, because I was searching for anything I could get. And so I heard his talk on change your thoughts, change your life. And I believe it was that next morning or that week, I wrote down in my journal. I was journaling off and on. I had for years, but just more as a record than as a journal, get feelings out. But I wrote down in my journal, I am happy, healthy, wealthy, and wise. And it made such, yes, I was working at that point. It made such a significant difference in my life. I was having back issues. I'd had them for 30 years, and I would hang on my inversion table every morning and listen to a motivational audio and repeat to myself, I am happy, healthy, wealthy, and wise. And it's still my mantra today. And everything shifted enough so that the relationship I was in is a whole nother story, but she was only there part of the time because of her job.
He was married. This was his third marriage. Yeah.
And she said, what happened? Did you come into a bunch of money? And I said, no, I just think about it differently. And so that's just a real small piece, but the tapping for the emotional freedom, writing letters to myself, to ex-wives, to my dad, to any baggage I was carrying. I had a fireplace, and I'd write a letter and I'd read it to them sitting in the chair across from me, and I burned the letter in the fireplace.
Wow.
And the hardest person to forgive, a lot of it was about forgiveness. The hardest person to forgive was me.
Oh, wow.
Myself. Because like I mentioned, my whole life plan was to get married, stay married, and raise a family. And so you can imagine I felt kind of like failure at that point.
Bless you.
But I realized that all of those experiences made me who I was, and I could go through them or grow through them. And so I just kept focusing on that, and on that one change of attitude. I'm happy, healthy, wealthy, and wise. And
oh man, superb. Thank you, Bob.
At one point I had to, I was still working on stuff after we got married. At one point.
We still work on
stuff. We still work.
You haven't stopped, have you? I mean, that's what I want to ask you about.
Having just doing some of the stats research and stuff that we looked at for today, just kind of reviewing some of the things we've done before. We had a really good talk about where we are right now. Yeah. But at one point I had in red lipstick on the mirror, I am enough. So every morning when I got ready to go to work, I read that. And another point when we were working on something else, it was, I am worthy to be heard. And
That was huge.
That, for me, that was,
Yeah, that was
that's
huge.
That's, yeah.
We didn't know he had that problem, that
Yeah.
issue. Yeah.
So anyway, yeah. And without all of it, and we still continue to grow that way, but I can't, well, my walls never would have come down. I don't care how somebody chisel, even somebody 18 years younger than me, if I hadn't already done enough work to start to consider the possibilities, we wouldn't be sitting here.
No.
Do you know, that's so beautiful, Bob. Thank you for sharing that. And I have this image of you pushing against the walls of yourself, the limitations, the blockages, and Viv on the other side, pulling them, making a hole, seeing your face through there, like, I'm pulling this side. Keep pushing because I'm pulling this side as well. And vice versa. You did that for each other, didn't you?
Absolutely.
Your yin and yangy way. And you just said there, it's you obviously you're still working on yourselves and your relationship. That's my final question. I know I've really dominated the conversation tonight. Sorry, Mrs. M.
It's fine.
And we'll talk about this later, I'm sure. But how do you approach challenges now? Because they'll still be coming up, won't they? It would be unrealistic to think that relationships. I mean, if relationships are finished and done, then what's the point of being in them, for one thing?
Yeah.
But what's your way now? As far as coming to a new country, that can all be heard in the interview that you did with Louisa, which will be coming out soon.
Mm-hmm.
But just person to person, humans to humans, talking here, and this I think could be really great advice because I think you're both good at it. Is what do you do when it's not woohoo and firing on all cylinders? What processes would you suggest to other people to look at?
Especially when you're in a country where you don't have support systems,
Yeah.
or where you have to have or find new support systems. Like, how do you keep going?
What do you say is that?
I think you do what we did today, because we've been kind of in a slump. We got really busy and just go, and then it started to rain. And it's rained and it's rained and it's rained. But that's okay. We don't fight the weather. We work with it. And
different physical issues this fall and winter.
We've had some physical issues come up and things. And so what we did today, we were watching an interview with this woman that we've watched before, and we just started talking, and the more we talked, the more things came out, and it's radical honesty goes on.
Yeah.
And if you ignore it too long, it starts to fester and get ugly, and you make it into more than it is in your head.
Oh,
and
wow.
Yeah, and then by then it's just out of control.
Yeah.
You want to put the fires out as they start to burn. And so that's what we did today. And we've talked about some things. We have some plans in place to take care of them. And it's all good. It's going to be, it'll be fine.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And and there's never a doubt to us that we can't fix anything. We can solve whatever the problem is, as long as we can be honest with each other and talk about it and make a plan. So that's what we do.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
Sorry, Bob.
We're ebb and flow. It's an ebb and flow plan. We're not rigid people.
No.
With ourselves or with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So
it doesn't have to be all one way or all the other.
Yeah, it has to start somewhere. And so that's one of the things that we learned this fall too, is we're changing our diet a bit, and in the process, and when we eat meals and that kind of thing, it's all those Portugal sweets and all that stuff. And
for me it is.
Well, me some too. Yeah. But anyway, we've realized that because we cut out the breakfast together, and then we realized at the very least we function so much better when we start our day together. So we now have.
And we were still together. We were still in the house. We were doing things, but at breakfast we would sit down
and talk.
And we'd eat our breakfast and we talk for an hour.
Yeah.
And we were missing that.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
were
of
really
course.
missing that.
Yeah.
And because we were doing the fast until at least noon
Yeah.
and sometimes past, so we weren't in the kitchen together. We didn't sit down and share a meal together, and we were missing it. So we have remedied that. We sit down and we have our tea and
talk.
Yeah. As long as it takes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's always an adjustment.
And it's not always about serious stuff. Sometimes it's about nothing important. It's just talking and
Oh yeah. Most of the time it's just talking.
Yeah.
But it clears the air. You know?
Does. Yeah.
And
we enjoy it.
And like somebody mentioned in the chat earlier, is that kind of thing that keeps the relationship firing on all cylinders, you know? And so when we started the whatever we were doing, whatever they call it.
The intermittent fasting.
Intermittent fasting, that's it.
We're doing that.
When we started that, it's like, man, I miss that. I miss sitting down with you. You know, I really do.
I have one more thing to say about the sex too.
Oh.
We have the best sex you can have starts at breakfast.
I agree.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
agree.
Starts at breakfast.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
Bob has a saying, kiss an angel good morning and love her like the devil at night. And
it's an old country
western
song.
song.
Yeah.
And it's true. It's true.
Yeah,
You treat me like an angel at the breakfast table, and you're going to get lucky later.
Well, I never. That is, people are writing that down. People are writing that down tonight. That's amazing. Thank you so much. I was going to go for a climactic last word. You might have peaked already there. That might be a bit premature, so to speak.
I don't know anything to say besides that.
I will go
That's half the battle.
Let's come back to Mrs. M to climax this evening with you both. But can I just go to a bit more advice from other people as well? So
people have shared so deeply, haven't they?
Well, Lord Gilchrist's tip for wooing a lady is to make her a lady, and that's literally, he's Lord Gilchrist, and he bought her a certificate to make her Lady Gilchrist.
Absolutely.
He probably loves her like a lady as well, if you know what I'm saying. So good books credit gold, he says, fellas, if you're looking for a birthday present or Christmas present. And Amelie, I think it's gone now, but it says to Nigel Henry, sounds like a solid plan, devoid of regrets. First the UK, and when the time is right, Portugal and the Algarve will still be there.
Absolutely.
What? Vaseline on the door handle will stop the kiddies interrupting.
I think that's
Not a worry.
We don't have little kitties anymore.
That stuff is so useful.
It is for you guys. Yeah, there you go.
There's a tapping link.
Door handles.
You mentioned EFT.
For people that don't know what EFT is, it's like emotional freedom technique, and you tap on different points.
Yes.
Tapping is also innuendo, isn't
something.
it? Tapping is also a word for tapping and coitus.
Yes.
When we met, we had 2 of everything. Marilyn had 4 of everything, so we ended up with 6 of everything. 6 steam irons is a problem. Now only 13 cars, 4 houses, another detritus gets in the way. Thank you so much for being in, Nigel. Really appreciate you with that. And a couple of days, we're still working. We are still working at 42 years in. But so much of what Viv and Bob have said resonates. This is what you do, says Eloise. Or Mrs. M, take it away.
Focus on each other. That's what you do. I absolutely love that. Thank you, Eloise. And in actual fact, we like every time we come around to our anniversary, we have a little conversation just to confirm if we're going to carry on. I was really disgusted when Carl suggested it, but now, it feels like a really good thing. Like just coming up to the anniversary, like a week before the anniversary, we even start to sort of signal our intent that we're going to carry on in the marriage.
I think it's really good. It makes a bloke smarten up his act.
Yeah.
If it's a druid idea, isn't it? Are we going to go round the sun one more year?
Yeah.
So I don't see any harm with that.
No, it's a choice, and it needs to be made. You don't want it to do by default. So
sounds
make
like
it on purpose.
Absolutely. Decluttering is a good thing, in my opinion. And look at this.
I love this. Yeah, communication is lubrication.
Oh,
when you
absolutely.
your morning chats, I really got that, and in fact, Eloise underneath is just saying,
look at
we
these
have
two.
our daily meetings in a joint.
Oh, nice.
Oh, Eloise,
Wonderful.
you're living the life.
Aren't you? Check it out.
Yeah,
That's great.
Showering together.
Bob and Viv shower first.
Yeah.
Together.
And then that old corny excuse, oh, my knees are a bit dodgy. Can you soap me? 'Cause I can't bend over. Yes, very good. A tap aware
First thing we did when we started deciding we could touch each other, we took a shower together.
It's funny because Pete's referencing, he said, just what I thought it is, a Tupperware party. But pampas grass too. When I first met Carl, he was talking about pampas grass and what it meant. And I had no idea, but I think it's
swingers. There's a sign of swingers.
Swingers.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, like, my parents have got pampas grass in my garden.
Everybody in Florida's got pampas grass.
We've got so many friends as well. They're such a gregarious couple. They're amazing. Mrs. M, will you conclude and climax for us this evening?
I don't know if I can climax, but I just really loved the absolute sort of honesty and the tone that we set tonight. It just feels really open and just the hearts are wide open. I think everyone's feeling that in the chat room as well. And I just wanted to say, you're going to come back and talk to us more, because like it feels like we've set the scene today, on relationships, how to have a thriving relationship, in your 60s, or, actually it's really good advice for everyone, really.
Absolutely.
And what I'd really love for us to delve in deeper with next time, if I may, is to hear more about what you have to share about, sex for the over 60s and more about your sexual adventure. I mean, It's funny, isn't it, that we're calling it sex over 60s, because what we've been talking about really is lovemaking, isn't it?
Of course.
That's what I'd really like us to get our lovemaking on next.
The tenderness.
Yeah.
We can do that.
Okay. Elvis Presley.
And also maybe, if you've been watching tonight and you've really enjoyed it like we have, send us in some questions that you would like.
And pictures.
Lots of pictures.
Please. But send us in questions as well, so that we
That'd be great.
open up this conversation.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you both so much. Now, I used the theme tune, which seemed incongruous. It was our old Feel Good Portugal intro.
Yeah.
And it's about the Portuguese Revolution, the Carnation Revolution of 74, which, of course, is the 50th anniversary next year. But what I've always loved about this clip from this a woman reading about it is, and it's applicable here because it's the truth. The words in it are because the thirst for freedom overcame all fears. Yeah. And that's in the revolution, that's true. That's what happened. And in your relationship, that's what happened, right? The thirst for freedom and extending that happiness and fulfillment, especially how you expressed it, Viv. You weren't prepared to live in the middle. It had to be live or die. Yes. Freedom, right? Yeah. And that's what helped you to overcome the fears of the sharing and the authenticity and the honesty there. So it makes complete sense that we go out with this again. And on that note, thank you everybody for being here, and you too.
I'm so glad you said that, because I was thinking, oh my goodness, what am I going to do the outro?
I had you covered. I've got you covered there. So Bob and Viv, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
And thank you for being so open and honest and authentic. I mean, I don't knowing you, I don't expect anything less. But doing it publicly is a real service that you've done. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
I imagine we're going to get some fan mail for you guys.
I think so.
That or hate mail, I don't know which.
See you soon. Thank you so much. Thank you everybody who's been here and taking part tonight. Bye for now.
On the 25th of April, the MFA announced that the people should remain at home because they feared armed confrontations on the street. But the Portuguese population clearly disobeyed the military orders to stay at home because the thirst for freedom overcame all fears. And so people took the streets to the thousands and supported the military coup to force the resignation of the leader of the regime. The people brought red carnations and distributed them to the soldiers, who stuck them in their rifle barrels, making the flower the symbol of the revolution. The revolutionary process of 74 and 75 was one of the liveliest experiences in Portuguese history. In 19 months, there were 2 failed coups, 6 provisional governments, the process of independence of the colony, several mass strike waves, demonstrations, occupations of thousands of houses, a profound agricultural reform, occupations of land, the creation of workers' cooperatives, workers' councils, trade unions, neighborhood commissions, self-managed factories, businesses, offices, newspapers, and radios. Because the thirst for freedom overcame all fears.